Hey, everybody. Welcome to The Wrong End of the Snake. It's a webcast about audio, touring, and the relationships that we have built between our road families. Tater and I have had an 18-year relationship on the wrong end of the snake with bands like Ted Nugent, Kid Rock, Slash, Stone Temple Pilots, Prophets of Rage, Iron Maiden, and most notably 10 years with Linkin Park. My co-host, Kevin Tater McCarthy, is a world-class monitor engineer with over 30 years in the business. I'm very proud to call him my friend and partner. He has 8 Top Dog Monitor Engineer of the Year awards and 2 Parnelli Monitor Mixer of the Year awards. I'm Ken Van Druten, aka Pooch. I am a front of house engineer with 3 decades in the music industry. I'm a 3-time Grammy-nominated recording engineer. I have 8 Top Dog Front of House Engineer of the Year awards, and I am a winner of the Parnelli Front of House Mixer of the Year award. Let's do a little housekeeping. Please use the chat window of the Zoom app to communicate amongst yourselves. If you are streaming from our YouTube channel and you want to get in on the action, register to be on the Zoom call for future episodes. Links to register are in all of our social media. If you have any questions for our guests, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom app and ask in that window. We will answer as many as possible during the hour, and then answer any leftover questions in our overtime Q&A episode that we release to the YouTube channel in a few days. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and social media. YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook is at Wrong End of the Snake. Tater, why don't you introduce us to the guest this week?
All righty. Thanks for that great introduction there, Pooch. Today is Phil Kamp. He's the head of sales at Klang Technologies, an immersive technology hardware and software company that has partnered with Audiotonix, an umbrella company whose other brands include Digico, SSL, Allen & Heath, and Calrec. Klang is a 3D in-ear monitoring package that has revolutionized the way that musicians hear themselves on stage. His responsibilities include trainings, seminars, and webinars. He also stays in regular and close contact with Klang's worldwide user base to support the ongoing development of the company's immersive binaural audio solutions. Let's welcome live from Germany, Phil Kamp. Thanks for being here, Phil.
Hello. Hey, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Hey, Phil. I think maybe you're our first outside of the U.S. guest here on Wrong End of the Snake.
No,
right,
we had his, what I'll call his big boss, James Gordon.
Oh, that's true. Right. Sorry, James. But anyway, greetings from Germany and from America to Germany, and we hope you're doing well in this crazy world gone mad. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you came from. Did you start as a musician? Tell us kind of the early years that led you into the music business.
Well, okay. So once I graduated from Lego school, I was starting to be interested in, musical instruments. That was basically the thing. We always had a piano at home. So I got lessons. And then with 13, 14, something like that, I started playing in bands. And I pretty quickly noticed that this is pretty much the world that I want to be in, I was very fascinated from concerts, from records, from the crazy sounds that you could get on those. And basically from my early teenage years, I followed that dream a little bit. And
so what instrument did you play?
Keyboards or piano and guitar.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I'm not one of the really cool ones. I'm not the drummer or the
or the bass player.
Well,
or a bass player.
Everybody's a bass player, right?
That is.
Yes.
Sorry, Tater.
We've discovered every sound person is almost always a bass player. I don't know. Me and Tater are both bass players. Yeah.
I mean, I had paid jobs as a bassist, so I guess.
Oh.
Yeah.
That beats me.
It was very desperate people. No, so after I finished school, I went to a conservatory and studied a thing called keyboards and music production. So it was a dual thing. Once the playing live and the music production, arranging, composing, writing scores and all that stuff. And then during the studies and afterwards, I started working for some recording studios, and like many of us, I just got dragged out on the road after that. So for the last 15 years, it was, yeah, I guess mostly 50-50 studio and live work. And towards the last couple of years, my time was filled up pretty much completely with Klang. So not so much touring or studio stuff myself anymore.
And how did the Klang thing? How did the marriage between you and Klang come about?
That's a funny story. You know Marcus, my friend from Klang. He actually did an internship at this startup that nobody knew and that was not public yet, you know. I have no idea how he got to that. But he couldn't tell me too much about it before, you know, and then he said, hey, the guys would like to meet you and to just ask you a couple of questions about, you know, your perspective as a sound engineer on a thing that some scientists cooked up. So the start was basically just me being like an advisor from the industry, aside of a couple of other guys. And yeah, I mean, that's something I have mentioned a couple of times. My first impression was, that's weird. Nobody needs that. Why? You know, so that's why I know those reactions from people who don't know it yet very, very well, because I had it myself back then. But then I took a look at it. I talked to the guys there. You know, the first meeting that I had with the Klang team, with the developers, I was basically just telling them why everything sucks that they did, you know? And I expected to not be invited anymore. But what actually happened is that the next day I got an email and they said, hey, thank you for your feedback. We just did an overnighter and we just implemented pretty much all the things that you mentioned. So here's a beta version, try it. I was like, holy, okay, interesting, you know? That's how the stuff came in there, you know? I mean, I'm not claiming that all the cool features are my idea. I only have a very small impact on that, but that showed me right away that it's the right group of people to actually move something, you know, and to just actually get the potential of the idea out into the world. And then it grew just more and more together.
That's funny because I had a very similar experience with Waves early on, where they were asking me to look at some of their stuff, and I got back to them with this giant list, and I was like, they're not gonna. And the same thing happened to me, like literally 3 days later. They're like, well, here's the new version with all the things you wanted. And I was like, wow, this is crazy.
I might do that just to get a job in the end out of it. So yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Yeah. Now, Phil, something I've always liked about Klang, and goes along with Digico, and we'll talk about the Digico purchase later. But when I was introduced to Klang, or I shouldn't say when I was introduced to it, when I first started using it, you guys came to me and said, you know, do you have any ideas? What's working? What's not working? What can we improve on? And I didn't throw much. I threw a couple things at you. Next thing you know, bam, there they are. So does that still go on to this day with Digico taking over, listening to the engineers and trying to implement it and see if it's the right ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why the merge with Digico was such a match made in heaven, actually, if I can say that. Because the attitude of the company, the attitude towards the customer base, and our friends and colleagues, because I mean, basically, it's both are companies that are formed out of the industry and are pushing stuff back into the industry. The attitude is very, very similar. I mean, of course, Digico, and especially Audiotonix, is a much, much bigger company than Klang. But especially if you take a look at the history of Digico, things were very, very similar in many, many parts. And actually, my first close connection, or closer to connection to Digico, came through Group One, our American distributor. And after we signed the contract with them, I came to I think it was Infocom or something like that. It was the first trade show that I did together with those guys, and a couple of Digico guys were there. You know, amongst others, even Bob Doyle was there, just visiting back from retirement, you know, and saying hi. And I had really interesting conversations with those guys, you know, and stuff that I was really nervous about and panicking about, you know, what happens if something goes wrong? What if there's a bug or something like this, you know? And they were like, okay, let us tell you a couple of stories. You know?
I'm sure.
And that was one of the most important conversations that I had in the early Klang days, because that just calmed me down quite a bit, because you are nervous when you're going out with something like that, especially if you invest so much time and energy and passion into it, and you just hope that it just gets received, and that people understand what is the idea behind it. And we were just panicking, and we were so scared about so many things, and just the advice from especially the early days Digico guys was very, very important for us. And we kept the contact with the guys, and now we can say that. Before, during negotiations and all that stuff, we couldn't say that, but that was our dream. We said, hey, when stuff goes further, where do we want to be? And we thought,
Right.
we want to be, as close as possible to that company.
I noticed early on being that, Tater knew about you guys before I did, because I'm a front of house guy. He's a monitor guy. And so he was like, man, you got to check this out. And one of the things that we noticed right away was the passion that all you guys have at Klang for audio and to make things better. And we latched onto that regardless of where you were. I remember a year that you were at the NAMM show and you were in the drum room.
You're in the cymbal aisle.
The cymbal aisle. Not
man,
even in the pro audio part. And Tater was like, dude, we got to go to the drum room. And I'm like, I do not want to go to the drum room. What do you mean? And he's like, no, dude, you got to come check this out. This Klang thing is amazing. And I'm like, okay. And we get there. People are just bashing on cymbals across the aisle from you. And I was like, this is so weird. This pro audio company is like in this, this weird spot. But I do know that year that you guys had a serious buzz going on, and there was all kinds of people coming to visit you and see what was going on. And again, that kind of leads back to that passion. I want to step back just a little bit, because I'm really curious, before you got involved, like what the origin history is, like who started this, who had this idea, who thought that it could be something that it's turned into, and where did that come from? Like, do you know, you obviously know that story. Share that with us.
That is something I can blame on my colleague Pascal. So Pascal, I think you both know him. He's like the super brain that we have in there. It's a very intimidating but very, very nice person. I learned so much from him. So Pascal has been a musician since a long time, like semi-professional musician. And he was struggling with the same things that everybody is struggling on stage, So he had wedges, it didn't work for him, It just never got him what he needed. Then he started with mono in-ears. That was better, but of course so wrong, So he went to stereo in-ears. It was better, but it was still not giving him what he imagined a good monitor sound should be. And luckily back then he was already in university studying electroacoustics, and later did his PhD in that. And he just started, developing the idea, in his basement, I would guess, more or less at the beginning. And then he got together with two other very, very brilliant guys, Roman and Benedict, who are still like the core of the development of Klang. Roman is the software engineer, and Benedict the hardware engineer, who also does the FPGA programming. Now with some support from a young guy called Thomas. So we're growing slowly a little bit. But that was the core team. The basic idea came from Pascal, and then those three guys putting their heads together just actually made it into something usable and into a prototype and into a business idea, actually.
Now, I don't know. I know, obviously, I know Pascal and Marcus and Roman, but I don't know Benedict. But one thing that guy did to confuse me in the whole darn thing that they've created is that damn double USB port in the front. You can put that USB key in either way, So I don't know if a lot of people know that. It took me a while to figure that out, thinking I broke it because it goes in both ways. But I love that thing, and you don't have the old trick of it won't go in the one way first and then the other way. Then you got to go back again, and it works the first way you tried it. So I wish other companies would have found that piece a long time ago and put it in their hardware.
Me too. But that is really a genius little thing. Yeah,
it is.
So lots of passion and lots of, this whole thing that we've started, with Wrong End of the Snake is really about relationships and how that works in this industry and how we all kind of know each other and work together in order to, in your case, make amazing products. And so you must have come into this and been like, wow, this is amazing. What was your, I know that you were kind of the guy that was like, hey, this isn't right, or this isn't right. But you must have did you see right away, like you saw that, okay, I can see where this thing is going to go? Or was it for you just, I don't know, it's an interesting thing, I'll hang on and see what happens?
To be perfectly honest, the first time I checked it out, I really didn't see the benefit in it. I have to be honest with it, because it was completely new, and I was not very familiar with binaural technology, at least not on a deeper level back then. But it only took me maybe 4 or 5 hours of actually having like a prototype at home, playing around with it, just chasing some multi-tracks through it. And then I was like, okay, let me go back to the mix that I had before, in stereo. I was like, okay, okay, sold,
Interesting.
So, yeah, I can't claim that I saw it from the first second, But
I always like to stay, and I think I stole this from Posy. Stereo's the new mono is what I always call when using the Klang. I'm pretty sure I stole that from Posy. He maybe got it from somewhere, but
no, I think that's
kind of the
Posy's,
statement. Yeah.
Oh, Posy's commenting. Yes.
Yeah. Posy says, yes, you did. That's awesome.
So no, that was quite clear. And then, especially as soon as we could go out and more or less public with it, and I first called up a couple of engineer buddies and monitor engineers and just brought it to them and told them, hey, look, so this is what we did. This is our idea how it could be used. What do you think? And those first reactions basically just sold it to me. That I was like, okay, so those are guys that I trust. I know that those are people with really good ears, with a lot of experience. They are on the road at least 15, 20 years longer than me, So if they like it, okay, we're definitely onto something, And then we just kept developing it.
You caught the bug and got the enthusiasm that those guys obviously had, Marcus and Roman and everybody had already. So I know you came out and visited me and Posy. We were at a festival somewhere in Europe, and I think Posy was mixing System of a Down. I was doing Linkin Park. So you got the two headliners there using Klang, and this was a few years ago now. This is at least 3 years ago. How is that feeling? Like you've seen this product from the start that you didn't like. Now all of a sudden you're going to a festival with 80, 100,000 people and the two headliners are there using the product. That's got to be a pretty good feeling.
I gotta say that was one of my personal milestones in the Klang were basically just visiting you two in there, because as you said, I mean, the two headliners, both massive bands, and actually both bands that I personally love, I mean, so I had so many fanboy moments at that day, No, but actually seeing it in action, and seeing the reactions, and have musicians come up to me and just saying, okay, hey, this changed a lot for us, So that was really, really a great moment. And it just showed how far it can go, It was the thing. I mean, we believed in it. I mean, I left basically my active studio and live engineering, which I always loved, for this. And I wouldn't have done that if I wouldn't have believed in it 1,000%, But then actually seeing those things that we just dreamed up a couple of years ago and sat at beers and just imagine how cool it would be if those bands would be using it, And then suddenly it's happening, That was fantastic and amazing.
And it must be, the past few years, the past couple of years, especially, partnering with Audiotonix, man, like everybody's using it now, which is amazing. That must be super rewarding and super fulfilling to know that people are doing that. One
Absolutely.
of the interesting things that I know about you grew up in Germany, right?
Mhm.
And you kind of have this really a real understanding of the American market, I think. Like, even back in the day when I was introduced to you, we went to that NAMM show and you were in this drum room or whatever. You understood that you had to get at American engineers to kind of go after the larger acts at the time, American and maybe UK too. But I've always felt like as you've always had a handle on the American market. And did you have anything to do with sales before this, or was this just something that you learned along the way? How did
Well,
all of a sudden you were like, I know how to handle this and be the sales rep for this entire big company? Like, how did that come about?
well, yeah, I kind of slided into that, and it turned out that it kind of works. You know, I got it in maybe in my blood a little bit. My dad is a salesman, and in a completely different industry, but especially when I got older and we weren't just having like father son conversations, but like a beer at night, and talking about it, and him telling me about how he's traveling the world and what he had to do, and how he convinced people, and all that stuff. That was always fascinating me, and I try to apply it a little bit, in my freelance past, because if you're a freelancer, you are a salesman. I mean,
100%.
it's not the same way that you do it in a bigger company, but essentially you're selling yourself. So I guess that was basically a practice, but I cannot say that I have like a huge accounting studies or whatever and all that stuff. I was just lucky that I always have the right people around me, and I always have good people who I can ask for advice. That has helped me in every facet of my career so far very, very well. That I seem to have some mentors.
I always tell people I want to be the dumbest person in the room. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be
Yes.
sitting there with 6 people and the 5 other people are definitely smarter than me.
That always
Those
happens to me.
Yeah. With
that is
I
that is a great place to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of overshot with that attitude, just joining Klang, because those guys are just, working at Klang is sometimes a little bit like Big Bang Theory, you know, um,
That's
in
great.
all ways, But what is definitely, I mean, the guys are really brilliant. So yes, I definitely nailed that to be the dumbest guy in the room in there. So accomplishment.
Yeah.
So fast forward a little bit to kind of go in order here. Now I remember like the next NAM, somebody from Group One, Matt or somebody. Next thing you know, halfway through the show, bam, your unit's up in the Group One booth, and they're taking over distribution for the U.S. So you can see the building blocks climbing up from the cymbal in the drum from the cymbal aisle in the drum room. Now the unit's up in the Group One Digico booth, and they take over distribution. Now fast forward even more, Digico buys you. What were the changes, good and bad? What were the changes when Digico took over?
Well, one of the very positive changes was that we had access to a much bigger team. Before we were like seven, 8 people, yeah, at Klang, and basically everyone had to do multiple jobs, and not all of those were what we love to do. And now we have access to much more people, and just brilliant and very, very experienced people. So actually everyone could just slide into their comfort zone in a very good way, you know. So for example, Pascal, who just was completely slammed with marketing duties before, now he can just be mad scientist again, you know, and just you know, bring stuff to explosion in R&D, you know. So that is a really positive thing. And then of course having like access to so many people, because there are existing relationships already. So we don't have to build all those relationships alone by hand, you know, step by step, you know. So that definitely helps a lot. We have people like James Gordon, who is you know, kind of the Steve Jobs of the music industry, you know. Is he, when he does a comment on something that we have an idea on, or that we're playing around with, he usually doesn't comment with many words, but you know, if you let it sink in, yeah, that's so spot on, you know. So having that level of experience behind us is definitely interesting. So that is definitely all positive. There's not a lot of negative stuff, I would say. I mean, it's a bigger company, so we had to adjust our working speed, because before all decisions were basically just a 1-minute phone call. Hey Roman, I have this idea, can I do that? Yeah, do it. Okay, decided, you know. And now it all has to go through a couple of more steps, but it's still very efficient, you know, and so that still works out. Brexit, yeah, we have to deal with Brexit now. So that is definitely an interesting one. But I mean, with how 2020 is going, Brexit is a little bit of the smallest worry. So I mean, I feel like everyone forgot about Brexit already, you know. And then at Christmas, oh shit, Brexit.
Yeah. You know, I think that maybe a lot of Americans watching this don't really understand what Brexit is. Just tell a little bit, like, what are the hurdles that you're having with Brexit? You know, obviously it has to do with trade, right?
It's a part of it. I mean, you could write 10 books about it, so I will try to just boil it down a little bit. So the story is basically that there's a thing called European Union, which is, amongst other things, a trade union. And there are very, very close ties between the independent countries. You know, it's not as close as the States and the US are connected, but it's, you know, halfway there, I would say. And the UK decided they don't want to do that anymore. Yeah, so they're leaving all those contracts, and relatively fast. That means there are probably 10 million contracts and trade contracts and all that stuff which have to be taken care of now. So that makes things quite interesting, and that makes it quite difficult to plan far in the future. However, again, I'm lucky enough to work with a really, really brilliant team, and we are set up for all possibilities as much as we can be. So we know that it won't affect us in an extreme way, but it's something we have to plan and work with, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And for those of you out there that don't know, Audiotonix is an umbrella company that is based in the UK, and Klang is a German company. So that's what we're talking about here, is the relationship between two companies, whereas the country that Audiotonix and Digico and SSL all work in has decided politic-wise to, you know, I don't know what they're doing, but they're that must be hard as a company to figure out where that's going to go. Obviously, you know, you guys are a company that are kind of working as one, but then there's all the politics of moving between all of that. So that must be interesting. Can we talk a little bit about what's happening right now? Obviously, we're in a place where our industry has slowed. Certainly the live event industry, our end of it, you know, Tater and ours end of it is non-existent at the moment. But as far as Klang goes, I imagine that you guys have, you're in the church market a little bit, maybe, or install or whatever. So I think those areas are thriving, right? Is that
Yes.
happening?
Yeah, that is definitely happening.
your pivot a little bit is to that, I would assume. But like, tell me, what is an average day for you, like working, for Klang? Like, who are you talking to? What are you doing? Where are you headed?
At the moment, you mean?
At
Or
the
in
moment,
general?
yes.
Okay, because it's
Obviously,
different now
yeah.
than it used to be. Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. That's my point, is that the COVID time is very different. We're wondering what you're doing now.
Mm,
Outside of COVID, when we start up again, I'm sure it'll be just crazy. It'll be
yes.
back to, where, because your company, the way I see it is your company accelerate, and tell me if I'm wrong, but your company was accelerating and was making huge product and was getting bigger. Your numbers must have been getting bigger by the day. And then COVID happens. And I'm sure that, despite your pivot into whatever market, um, I'm sure it's a lot less than what's happening, much like what's happening in the rest of the industry. So tell us now, like, what's going on with you.
Well, just so for my personal part, I mean, usually before COVID, I was just traveling pretty much nonstop. Just doing trainings, visiting distributions, visiting clients, and all that stuff, all the time, which I always loved. I mean, that's a fantastic thing. So now I'm basically stuck in my hometown for longer than I have been in a decade, probably. I have no idea. Um, so. I'm trying to do the same thing that I did before, just through the internet. We do webinars. We do the public ones. We also do private ones with our distributors or with clients who are working with it. We are trying to identify chances wherever something is popping up. So that is not too different from before. It's just a little bit more challenging in some parts. On the other hand, I have to say, that we had the chance now to get in closer contact with quite a few sound engineers who usually are way too busy to thinking about implementing new stuff. I mean, Tater, for example, I think between us starting to talk and you actually implementing it was probably at least a year, because you just didn't have a chance, right?
Yeah, I mean, we were in the middle of a tour, and actually, Ian Squid Walsh, originally, he went to see it when we were in Germany. He was working for the opening act of Mice and Men. He went to see it and brought me back the card, um, and then I think Posy, that's what first introduced to me, and I think Posy started to get into it, and then we ended that tour and we started another one, and that's when I thought, perfect time to put this in. Let's see the magic here.
Yeah, so that's it. Basically, has always been interesting for us, that we everybody wanted to check it out and to just implement it, but the reality of touring doesn't always allow that. So now we had the chance to actually get in touch with a lot of people, and just actually talk it through, and have them send us show files so we could just tell them, okay, so if you want to have a cool starting point, that is probably a good way to get started. And so that brought a little bit of a calmness in there. So we know that as soon as this weirdness is gone, it's going to be a very busy time, and other than that, I'm I'm more invested now in R&D and testing and all that stuff, so stuff that I just couldn't do for the last at least 3-4 years because I was just traveling too much. Now I have the time for it, and it's something I actually enjoy, so getting, prototypes or prototype softwares and all that stuff and just fiddling around, trying to break it. Then write boring reports about it. That's the only part I don't like about it.
While we're on the conversation, I want to bring this up at the end. You do some fabulous, not only looking and sounding and content-wise webinars. Do you want to say where you can, where everybody can find those at? How to see them and view them, because you do some great work with those.
Thank you. Well, the easiest way would be just to go to our website, just klang.com. There's directly on the starting page, if you scroll down a little bit, there's a link to all our webinars. They are all done on Facebook, so you can also find it on our Facebook page, but they're like a little bit better sorted on our website, and you get the links there.
Now, speaking of webinars, I watched, I think it was Ryan did one, and it wasn't, it was a specific Klang one. Ryan Shelton from Group One did. and you guys
together with Molly.
teased some new product. And if you didn't watch that, you missed it because it wasn't in the replay, I don't think. Because I think I was listening to it in the car, and I went back to rehear it just to review it, and I didn't hear the same parts. Now, did you guys tease something there? Can you not talk about it? Can you talk about it? What did you tease there?
I can talk a little bit about it.
Okay.
And actually, we re-added that teaser part again, so you can watch it again.
Okay.
So basically, what we just did is we showed a prototype. That would be something we would have done at maybe Infocom or something like that, and just maybe public. Maybe we'd have just taken a couple of friends to a back room and just showed them, hey, this is what we're working on right now. What do you think? And since we cannot do that, we just decided, okay, let's do it in that form, and just show the idea behind it. And what it is, it's a controller. So it's a hardware controller, because for a monitor engineer who is working with the band, we have the full integration to the Digico workflow now. So you just work on your console, and you don't have to work on an app anymore. For the musicians that are using it as a personal monitoring system, they're using a tablet. It could be an iPad, iPhone, Android, Mac PC, whatever. But not everybody is down to working with a touchscreen. Most people are, and it's definitely by far the most flexible way to just have a user interface. But I totally get it that it's not for everyone. And we decided, okay, let's see what we can do about that. One of the first things we did 2 years ago was that we implemented the MCU protocol, so you could just hook up a couple of MIDI controllers to the app. But that was definitely not the thing that that was at the end of the road. That was basically just a public alpha version of what we're working on right now. So it's just a box that is in front of the musicians. There are a couple of encoders. There are little LED screens that show you which channel you're working on. You can do the levels, mutes, solos. You can do the horizontal positions, the elevation. You can have the relative mixing that we introduced for the DCA groups. That is all implemented in there. Of course, a studio grade headphone amp is directly on the front. So especially for orchestra pits, you don't need to run through a wireless audio anymore. And then a couple of things that I cannot mention yet. So the idea is just everything that people ask for, plus what we like. I think
that's great, and that's awesome. You know what I've noticed in this COVID time is that it looks to me like some front of house guys and broadcast guys are kind of implementing Klang maybe into their workflow and coming up with ways that maybe it wasn't ever used before. So tell us, has anyone deployed Klang in a way like you have never thought of, or is using it in a way that you were like, oh, okay, that's cool. I want to, let's try to help that person to expand on that. Speak to that a little bit, because I'm interested as a front of house guy with, here we are in this time period where, we're going to be broadcast guys probably for a little bit, at least streaming. How can Klang be used in that sense?
Well, yeah, that's something. I mean, now 2020 is like the streaming concert year, I guess, and that's something that it just basically brings a stereo monitor mix more or less to the audience, who for the most part are listening on the headphones. And we all know that, it doesn't always translate perfectly to headphones, and it has a lot of restrictions, and that, yada, yada, yada. That's the story why I'm sitting here, actually, with Klang. So there were quite a few people very early on who discovered basically that, why not use it for something else than monitoring? I think the first one who did that was a guy from southern Germany, now Austria, Toby. If you're watching, shout out. He was the sound engineer for like an indie band, not a massive band, like a club thing, like 300, 400 people clubs, like small things. And it was a very creative band with a lot of, very fine sound design that are in there. And they were really frustrated because that didn't translate to the really shitty club PAs that they always went to. So they were using Klang as a monitoring device already. So they said, hey, why not just do it on headphones? So they just rented like a couple of trunks of those silent disco headphones. And yeah, just put in a subwoofer in the room, and the rest was done on the headphones. And the sound engineer suddenly, had a really creative role. He could just move stuff around and just let delays spin around, and took it from there to a bigger production with I don't know, like a small festival with 2,000 people or something like that. And from there, it came into some churches who did a broadcast service where basically, okay, so it's already there. The signals are laying there already. So if you're anyways just sending a copy of your front of house mix, more or less, to the audience, why not try to make it a little bit cooler? Because at the end, everyone is just watching it on phones or iPads with their headphones anyway.
Okay.
And now
sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but now that we're right in the middle of that, that's where I want to come in. So there's a couple companies out there now, Peaks, and there's one other one that I work with. Sorry, I can't remember the name. It's owned by the guitar player from Incubus, where the crowd buys a VIP experience type thing, and they wear their own headphones and can kind of mix the show or solo the show, different instruments, and turn stuff up and down, or listen to the front of house guys mix. I want a consultant fee for this, by the way. Is Klang going to get involved with things like that to put it through Peaks or this other audience experience, VIP experience systems to make that work or to be a better experience?
No, there are no plans to do that at this time. However, if somebody wants to talk to us, the door is always open, But I think it's a little bit of a different concept because even if it's both an app that has faders on it, it's one decision if you want to have the audience work on a mix. I'm not sure Pooch, how you would feel about that. I think every sound engineer would see that in a different way, While the way that we are doing it is basically just a fixed mix. Yeah, that for sure.
So that would be the engineer mixing through Klang to left and right headphones to those audience members.
Yeah. Well, that is a completely different thing, and that is easy to implement. You don't need any extras with that, because the nice thing is that the output of a Klang unit is just a stereo feed that you just send to whatever stereo headphones you have, through whichever way you want to do that. Be it RF, be it I don't know. There are some Wi-Fi transmission systems. I think Sennheiser did one. There's a couple of other ones that I don't remember the name right now. So that doesn't really matter which system you're using. Klang is basically just spatializing that. So it's not a competition or something. It's just sitting in between,
Fantastic.
I'm just wondering, I remember, and this was a long time ago. I don't remember when it was, but maybe it was 10 years ago. I walked into a European festival tent that was quiet except for sub information, and I thought that the PA was broken. I was like, what is happening? I'm going to go walk in here and see what's happening. And it was a silent EDM thing, and it was like everybody in headphones just losing their mind. And there was probably like 2,000 people in there, and I was like, whoa, this is a trip. And from my perspective, and being, coming from being a studio guy, I can see the benefits of that, just the headphone part of that, but also now with the spatiality, everybody's trying to do this immersive audio thing, which is very cool. I think that the speaker version of that is not quite as cool. There's all kinds of companies that are trying to do it with massive amounts of speakers and make it happen in a room without headphones. Yeah, I mean, do you see that as a path? Do you see, do you see that coming? Like, do you think there's going to be concerts where it's an arena full of people with headphones?
I don't know. Possibly if there are benefits aside from the reduced noise pollution.
I was just thinking that myself. You see a lot of SPL limitations now, especially in the EU. You see even more. I was just wondering if maybe it was going to maybe kind of head that way just because of the limitations they're putting on.
Yeah, it could be that. And then, of course, you can do some crazy stuff as soon as you have a binaural transmission in there, which is really cool. But I think it's not necessarily an either that or that scenario. It's basically, I think, just a parallel thing. So what we have seen quite a bit recently was installations or concerts using things like Soundscape or Elisa or Astro. The various immersive speaker processing units that are out there. And then they were using Klang as a binaural mixdown for like a VIP area, like a press tent or something where they couldn't replicate the whole experience in there, or even to stream an L-Acoustics Elisa show onto the internet, where people could just experience like the immersive part of that. And that's another thing that we often get asked, so what do you think about your competition from Elisa and all that stuff? And we always say, no, we are partners, we are friends. It's completely opposite. And actually, with Elisa, there's even a Klang integration. So there's actually a button in the Elisa software called Export Speaker Data to Klang. So it's basically just a plug and play connection to just set both systems up to work together.
So that's awesome. So the working within the Elisa thing of getting your speakers all in an immersive way, you can then make your broadcast or your record be that way via Klang then, right? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's amazing. That's really great.
There
I can imagine
some good applications for that.
Well, yeah, I can imagine, if this thing continues and we aren't going to have some major shows, there's a lot of guys out there right now going, I wonder how I can make this thing work, which is good news for you. And so, yeah, cool. Yep. What are you, you've talked a lot about, there were points in this, journey for you with Klang. Is there something that you are the most proud of, like something that you did personally to help Klang to be what it is? Was there a moment where you were like, okay, I've done this? Was it maybe the moment, were you integral in that, combination with the Audiotonix? Was that a moment for you, or do you have a moment that was big?
There are many moments, but quite honestly, I'm not trying to be humble here or something, but I'm German, we're not humble. Mm-hmm. So, no, but the thing is, everything we do is a team effort. So the Klang team is an incredibly tight-knit group of people, We talk a lot. We discuss basically nearly everything that we're doing amongst each other. So I wouldn't be able to claim anything as my personal achievement in there. I have a role in that, of course, and I guess the closest thing would be that I was able to make some good connections, because I'm the guy that is traveling, so I'm meeting the people. With my background as a sound engineer myself, I am most of the time able to just talk on eye level with sound engineers about, things that they want, that they need, that work or that don't work and all that stuff. So I think that was something that I'm really happy with, and that worked out pretty well. But at the end, really everything is just a real team effort of the Klang team.
Yeah, because you definitely became, at least to the engineers out there and the people, you were kind of the face of it, because you were out there demoing it, showing it. You still to this day are doing the webinars and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's where that kind of question came from, and you probably get most of the engineers' calls also, I'm sure, right?
A lot of them, yeah. I mean, every now and then I leak out Pascal's phone number, cell phone number, and I get a beating afterwards. No, actually Pascal is so essentially I'm like the first wall of support for many of our people. As soon as stuff gets like really tricky and out of user errors or things that we know already. If it gets like into deep networking audio stuff or something, then I always like, Pascal, here you go.
I thank Pascal too, because I had, at least complicated for me, I was trying to do something no one else done before, and Pascal worked it out for me, and I'm still thankful for him to that day because I'm still using it that way. So he was it was
Yeah,
nothing for him though.
that's the interesting thing, because he always finds a solution. And not only Pascal, but basically also like the other guys in the team. So there has not been a lot of instances where we had to tell a client or a friend, no, it's not possible. You know, what usually it is like, either okay, this is how you do it, or maybe in some cases we have to say, okay, it doesn't work in the same way that you want it to, but we can make it work, maybe with some beta version that we just hacked together overnight or something. But usually there's always a solution for something.
And is there anything you want to give out? I mean, can people out there talk to you via the Klang website? Is that how they can get a hold of you if they need to?
Yeah.
Um, I know even me personally, I get asked a lot for demos and how do I get a hold of you and stuff like that. And when people reach out to me, I generally talk to you and I give you their info, but maybe they can go right to the website too, and maybe it's faster.
Sure. I mean, whatever works. I mean, it all will end up at my phone. So it doesn't matter if it's via Facebook or email. Um, I mean, we always love to know the people through somebody else. You know, that's always interesting to have like a connection with somebody. But other than that, everything works.
So it's easy to get a hold of you. And then right now,
Usually.
I'm sure everybody who wants one has got a unit at their house, as far as your demo stock and all that stuff. And are you guys actively sending them out to people now and doing that stuff while everybody has this
Of course.
downtime?
Yes, of course, yeah. As much as we can. I mean, we don't have an unlimited demo pool, but we try to circulate them as much as possible. Especially now that people actually have the time to take an evening and really listen to it. So it's a perfect chance.
Hopefully, this time of not a lot of live entertainment sales, people are demoing it and using it, and those will turn up into sales later on down the road when we all get back to work here.
That would be very nice.
Well, I always, I always tell people that during this time period, if you're not taking this opportunity to go online and, watch your webinars, for example, and learn more about what's going on, you're doing it wrong. Because we have, obviously people have to kind of pivot and find jobs and whatever. We're all trying to figure out how we can make a living. But in the time period when you are stuck at home, guys, spend some time learning about this, going to the Klang website and watching their webinar stuff. And I imagine you touched on this a little bit earlier, that the R&D part of this time and period, hopefully when we come out of this and, hopefully as soon, but who knows, you guys are going to have some, a bunch of new things going on. Is there anything you can share with us besides that controller?
No.
No,
sorry. That's great.
But
Stuff's coming then.
Who knows?
But that means that something's coming, so that's good.
Cool stuff's coming.
The thing is, everyone who knows us knows that we're not lazy people. So we use the time. We identify things that could be done better, and we try to come up with something. So
yeah,
that's as much as I can say.
This pertains to all the webinars we've done. I think this is number 14, and basically to the younger people. A lot of people think, we just get hired by a band and we go out there and we mix these shows and load the truck and we go on the bus. The reason me and Pooch decided to do these is it's way more than that. And that's why we've had the variety of guests on we've had. You can't just stand behind the mixing console and do these shows without a tremendous amount of support from a ton of different people. And you have to know, from the money people down to the manufacturers, down to the people, the shipping and receiving guys at the shops. I mean, the support it takes to be out there, it's incredible. And there's a ton of people you have to know other than just knowing the mixing console. And that's why we're doing this relationship thing, because that's the support you need when you're out there doing this stuff. It takes tons of support. So that's why we started these. You're in that chain, and Klang and obviously Audiotonix is a trusted and reliable vendor to us, and that's why we use them. And everybody knows when you're on the road, that's what you have to have is trusted and reliable gear. And not only the gear has to work, the people behind it have to be helping you 100% and know your limitations on the road. You can't call every 5 minutes, and you have 2 minutes to solve a problem that they need help with. So we thank you for that. I just wanted to say that because sometimes we're on number 14. It gets lost while we're doing these and talking to the variety of people we're talking to and about. It's not just turning the faders up and looking at the band.
That's true. I mean, thank you first. Yeah, but I totally agree, and that goes, of course, both ways. You know, I mean, especially we as a still relatively young company, we have so many close friends now who we have to thank so much for. I mean, you two guys are definitely a part of that. There's Pasi, who was the first monitor engineer to take out Klang on a like big international touring act, System of a Down back then. And that was actually, I think, 9 months after we introduced our product to the market. So there was a huge sign of trust. And you know, there's more people. I mean, I can't name all of them right now, but there are so many people out there who we are incredibly grateful for. And we love that this is such a nice industry. If can I say it like that? I mean, it's it's tough sometimes, but you know, for the most part, people are talking to each other. They are honest to each other for the most part again, and there's a lot of very interesting relationships, and the things that come out of that are definitely more than the sum of two parties. You know, so.
Yeah, the manufacturers that we work with are manufacturers that make a product that's badass, right? Let's not lose that. The actual product is amazing, but it's really the first initial part of that is getting to know the people and to know that they're going to have your back. Like Tater said, at 2:00 in the morning when something's not working. You know, someone that takes one of my phone calls is a company that I want to keep, you know, working with. We're kind of winding down here to the end, but there's something that I've been meaning to ask you this whole entire time, which is there, you know, a manufacturer puts out a product, they have an intended way that people, they intend it to be used this way. Have you noticed a trend of a way that monitor engineers are using this product that wasn't an initial intention? Like you were like, and all of a sudden it came back to you and you're like, wait a minute, there's a bunch of guys that are using it like this. Is there anything like that?
I mean, there's the very obvious, let's call it side uses. We talked about that a little bit, like, you know, the combination with immersive speaker setups, with streaming concerts. I think there's even one guy using it at a shooting range. I just don't know exactly how. It's like, you know, stuff like that, you know. So there are very interesting ways of using the platform and the possibilities with that. Inside our core application, let's call it like that, you know, like the monitor mixing, there's always steps like that, but then they just grow into the product. So from the very first version that we had on Klangfabrik to the version that is running now, it has much more channels, it has more possibilities and all that stuff, but also all the features, all the workflows are refined by us talking to a lot of our users and, you know, just getting their feedback. Even sometimes it's big things and sometimes it's just small things like, you know, could you just move that button a little bit to the left because my fingers are too big to not hit the other thing at the same time. Yeah. So it's all the time developing, and so
I think what you're saying
there are no wrong uses or something. There's just things that we can use to grow.
No, I get it. So I think what you're saying is that your R&D is listening to your end user, and whatever the end user is focusing back on you, you are taking your product in that direction, which is that's, as an end user, that's all that I can ask a manufacturer to do, for sure. All right, we're coming up on the end here, but we always have a couple of questions, or a question that we ask at the end here. One is, if you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you say to yourself?
Relax.
Relax.
It's all gonna come together.
Yes.
Yeah, I think when I was starting, I was stressing out about way too many things and tried to plan my career. Now I know that planning a career in the audio world is, I think, a pretty silly thing. The only things that ever got me to a next step was just doing a good work and being nice to the right people, essentially nice to everyone. I don't think I made a lot of enemies, and that's something that I got a lot from talking to many colleagues. I think that's always what works out, So yes, my advice to my 18-year-old self would be relax.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think that people get lost in the stress of trying to build your business and try to build yourself, especially when you are an independent engineer trying to come up in this industry. It's the stress of that drives us, but it's also an enemy. Eats away at our soul by, consuming us in the sense that we are constantly thinking about how to be better at what we do. So much so that we lose focus on what's around us, our families, that kind of stuff. So I always tell people that maybe balance is a great word. Figuring out what that balance is, and honestly, it's taken me 50 years to figure out what my balance is. And when I was 18, my balance was totally wrong. Like, so stressed out. I'm driven. I want to be the best at what I do, et cetera, et cetera. And it has driven me to be where I am. But it has also taken away a lot of years of that. So, relax. I love it.
It's really
great. I love it. Cool. Any other thing you want to share with us here at the end, or
promote anything like that?
I think you guys already did a hell of a job promoting whatever I wanted to promote. No, I'm kind of out of words. Just check out what we do. Check out our webinars if you want to learn anything about the way with it we think and that we approach our designs and products. And if you have any questions, get in touch. So we don't bite. We really genuinely enjoy talking to our fellow sound engineers.
And I would say to you guys out there that are, front of house guys, really kind of think about this product in an interesting new way that you can use it in this time period. Because I think a lot of people think of your product as, a monitoring device. They don't think of all the things that it does outside of that. And especially as we're pivoting here in this industry, I think that there's some really cool things that we can do with your product. And so,
another thing I think that gets lost too is they think maybe it's only big bands that have to use this thing. And I was just thinking, like, guys that might be working now doing smaller gigs and they don't have a monitor person. There's nothing better than to have a Klang as your personal monitor mixing system. So, it's not just arena and stadium bands using these. Smaller bands can really benefit from a Klang.
Absolutely. Yep. And actually we have seen that journey for a couple of bands already who did not have the budget for a monitor guy, so they just started using Klang, with tablets on stage. And then at some point they just had like a drum tech or somebody on the side of the stage who just started helping them a little bit. And suddenly that person was the monitor engineer. And, step later, okay, he or she actually got a decent console to just connect with Klang, so it can grow in that way together.
And hopefully they got a pay raise going from drum tech to monitor engineer.
I sure hope
Yes.
so, yeah, but I try not to get involved in that.
Yeah, no negotiations on your part. Cool. Well, Phil, hey, listen, man, thanks for coming. We consider you a great friend, and
Thank you,
we
guys.
love your product, and we want to help other people to love it too, because it really. I know that Tater, you know, once he implemented it in his world, he couldn't stop talking about it, and then, you know, since I've learned about it and done the demos and checked everything out and even listened to, you know, Tater's mixes, I was just like, holy crap, man, this thing is amazing. So thank you for that, and thanks for coming. Really appreciate
Thank you
it.
for
Yeah,
having
thanks, Phil.
me. Thank you so much.
So next week on Wrong End of the Snake, it's Lonnie Southall. Lonnie is the founder and CEO of My Brother's Keeper, MBK. It's a high-level security company that provides state-of-the-art security services for artists, venues, and tours worldwide. He's been in the business for over 20 years and has received many accolades along the way, including a TourLink Top Dog Award. His clients include Bruno Mars, Shania Twain, Pink, Linkin Park, Khalid, Skrillex, and Korean mega K-pop band BTS. So next week, tune in for Lonnie. Both Tater and I have toured with Lonnie. He's an amazing dude, and we're going to get a little perspective from a security side of things. So cool. All right, Phil. Well, thanks again for coming. We sure do appreciate it. And see you guys next week on The Wrong End of the Snake.
Thanks, Phil.